quick video. Am I capable of that? I have no idea, but I'm going to try because I got a lot of work to do today. But I really did want to respond to both Darran Kern and Deconverted Man, who made videos in response to my video, sort of talking about Matt Slick and Deconverted Man and some issues I had with morality. And first of all, I just want to say, I really appreciate the responses. It's what a great conversation. So I really appreciate that. I take no offense to any of the challenges that you've made, because that's what this is about. And I do want to reiterate again, because there seems to be almost some question, at least in Darran Kern's mind. I am not saying I have the answers. I'm not saying I have absolute knowledge in these things. I'm on a quest as much as anybody. So at one point, Darran Kern said something like that I reflexively asserted or something that morality is objective. That's kind of unfair, actually, because I don't think it's reflexive at all. I've done a lot of thought, many nights of deep thought in the hot tub, a lot of introspection, a lot of research, a lot of thought experiments. And I've said in every video pretty much that I don't have all the answers. I'm not saying I know this for certain. I'm on a quest. And in fact, actually, Darran, it was you in your video who made some pretty bold assertions that morality is subjective and it doesn't come from a source, which I actually agree with, but it's subjective and it doesn't come from a source, and it's contextual, and there's no absolute standard. Well, you haven't substantiated any of that. I think if anyone's being reflexive, it's you, and I mean that with all respect, because I cherish the fact that someone would take the time to make a video in response to me. And you know I have much respect for you anyway. I'm going to take some time to answer some of the questions or some of the comments that you made in your video. But I've only been able to make it up to like 4 minutes, and I've already got, so much, right? So I will do that, time permitting. Deconverted Man, a couple of things. You'd asked what my ethical system is, and I could not formulate that for you on paper. Part of the reason is because I'm on a quest. I believe that morality, to be coherent, is objective, and that it is it's absolute, and that it really, most of morality has to do with the big heavyweight moral issues. And I want to clarify that to Darran Kern as well. I'm talking about murder, rape, theft, slavery, those kind of things. I think a lot of everything else sort of falls into maybe subcategories or just aesthetics, doing the least harm. When we start talking about micromanaging, I think Deconverted Man used the example of needles. We use needles now, and if we could find a way of doing it that didn't hurt, we'd be morally obliged to use that method because it's the least harm. I think that's a micromanagement thing, and I think that's just something that we would do anyway, because especially in a free market, that would be desirable by the people getting the needles, and so they would be requesting that. They might pay extra for that, or they might just say, I'm not taking a needle if this is available, and I'm going to go to the clinic that offers the painless system, so I'm going to do that. So I think when you get to micromanaging society, that's where you get the problem, and you get $18 trillion in debt, right? Because you have these entities that decide that it's their job to be the moral police and just run around controlling everything. I think that's a bad idea. I think moral heavyweight issues, at least, are what I'm talking about: murder, rape, theft, slavery, those kind of things. Now, again, I can't really formulate I can't give you a name of my ethical system. Part of the reason is because it's in flux. But I do believe, personally, that it is objective and that the standards are absolute. You can't say that theft is wrong on the individual level, but in a societal level, you can make a case for it. I think if it's wrong, it's wrong. And I think if you've developed a societal system that advocates theft because it does somehow fulfill a utilitarian need to provide the greatest good for the greatest number, I think that system fails the test of ethics because it condones something that we've deemed as a first core principle to be unethical. That's sort of where I'm at on that. And I've said quite a bit in my video that, these things don't make sense to me, that this concept of subjectivity doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't fill certain requirements, and there are disconnects, which I'm going to get far more into in my video response to Darran Kern. And Deconverted Man said, well, that's an appeal to personal incredulity, or incredulity, as Deconverted Man would say. Just a jab. Well, I understand that if I was engaged in a formal debate, or if I was making absolute statements about the truth of reality, and I'm not. I'm explaining why I can't accept subjective morality, at least not at this point in time. I'm open-minded. So I'm not committing a fallacy there. I'm explaining where I'm at and why I want to engage. And Deconverted Man did acknowledge that. He said, you know, we're involved in an information exchange here. We're not involved in a formal debate. And so let's put it this way. I'm fully aware, and was before your video, that if I were involved in a formal debate, that would not be you know, a logical argument to make. That's a fallacious argument. Totally with that, no problem. Finally, and I got to wrap this up, I did want to answer Deconverted Man's thought experiment about Hitler. Why we always get to Hitler. I know, it makes for a great thought experiment. And also the thought experiment about the aliens. I understand that it was a thought experiment. It's just that those thought experiments, I have a problem with them because of how outlandish they are. But I do appreciate that you acknowledged, or at least agree with me, I think, that the morality of the act actually hasn't changed. It's still wrong to kill somebody, but in that case, it may be the best possible solution. And it's shitty. But the moral agent there is not the person being forced to make a choice between two immoral acts. The moral agent in that case is the alien who's forcing that to happen. And you know, the outcome of either is not going to be good. It doesn't make the act moral. And I agree with you on that. And I think that's very, very critical. That's a key point there. And I guess if you're not willing to step up to the plate, I'll make the decision. And as I said in my video, you may well just make the decision to kill that one person if you know that it's going to save everyone else. It just doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it moral. You might not get punished for it because people would recognize that you were not the moral agent there, that the aliens were the ones who did the bad thing. They should be the ones dealt with. But back to Hitler. He'd asked the question, if you could go back to Hitler as a baby, would you kill him? And he said, absolutely, yes, of course, I would do whatever I had to do to kill him. And maybe Capricious Black Box would say no, because he hasn't done the bad things yet. Well, that's a bit of a false dichotomy. I'm a little surprised. I'm just kidding. That's a false dichotomy, because you're saying that the only way to stop Hitler, you know, you either let Hitler live and he does all these bad things, or you kill him and all those things are prevented. If I could go back to Hitler as a baby, I'd remove him from that fucking abusive and dysfunctional family that created probably the monster that he is. As a baby, yeah. I would probably do that. If you don't know the history of Hitler, you should look into it. This guy was damaged goods before he hit puberty. And I think that's largely causal in probably a lot of the other things that he did. I mean, I would just remove him from a society and from a parenthood and that sort of thing that I think created the monster that he is. And I don't think that he was, I don't think Hitler was born a mass murderer. I just don't. You know, a bunch of hateful comments now that I'm a Hitler apologist. No, I think it's very important. As society, we treat symptoms and we very rarely treat root causes. And I think when it comes to that kind of stuff, we need to be aware of root causes. I'm not saying, of course, that I absolutely know that Hitler's childhood is what created the monster that he was, but I think there are good studies that have been done on epigenetics and mirror neurons and the way that babies, you know, mature to support what I'm saying. Do some research on some of the orphanages in some of the Eastern countries, Romania and some of the places like that where children are just sort of thrown into a room and just left to their own defenses. And then people come when they're 6, 8, 10 years old and they're just robotic. They're functionally mute almost. They're void of emotion, certainly void of the kind of tender emotion that we associate with childhood, you know, at least in our modern era where we, you know, interact and make lots and lots of eye contact and smile at our children and coo at them. I think there's stuff out there to support what I'm saying. So, no, I probably wouldn't kill baby Hitler. I think I would do whatever I could to to make sure that he didn't become what he was. And I would watch him. I mean, again, you're talking about the benefit of the knowledge we have today. I would watch him very, very closely. I would make sure that he had psychiatric evaluations. And I would also probably do what I could to prevent him from gaining political power. And that's interesting. You know, we're actually, this is all interspersed with some discussions about government, which Darran Kern mentioned. That makes a good case for not giving murderous, crazy people the throne of power to make moral decisions. It's kind of nuts. Anyway, that's my answer to some of those questions. I'm back to work. Darran, I'm really, really hoping to make a response video to yours soon, because there's a lot of material there. Appreciate it as always, guys. And everyone have a beautiful day. I'm going to try my best as well. Thanks for watching.